Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Lauren Gross, who is Digital Marketing Lead with the Chic Geek, based in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mario. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, recently you were a participant in the inaugural Small Business Summit held here in Calgary, presented by Square, Interac, and the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, before we get into your role at the summit, tell me just a little bit about Chic Geek and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chic Geek is a local nonprofit creating space for women to thrive in the tech industry. Women are often unrepresented, as well as they leave their roles two times more likely than their male counterparts. So we're really focused on mid-career retention of women in tech. And that also means creating space for everybody to bring their whole selves to work, which is super important now. The Calgary tech industry is booming, tech is growing. So we are seeing high demand, and we work with, yeah, a lot of women in the industry to make them feel like they have a space.
Okay, super. Now, what you talked about at the summit was the best ways to build a business brand and community. Maybe just start off this conversation by tell me, why is that important for small businesses to build a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the summit, I was talking with Aislinn Grant from Grant Design as well. She does a lot of rebranding, and she actually did Chic Geek's most recent rebranding last September. So it was a really great conversation about that process. What we found and we identified as like the really important parts, especially for small businesses and their brand, is identifying their values. That's really what's going to make your business stand out in the marketplace, especially if you're in a high competitive area. And it'll also help you bring the right types of people to your business, really identifying and communicating, okay, what are my values and how does that influence the way I interact with my customers? So we find that it is really step one to identifying who your community is, who your customers are, is that brand, and then those values that go with it.
Okay, and so what are some of the best ways of building that brand? And more importantly, I guess letting people know what the brand is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of the really key traits that we talked about is that when we say values, that comes back to what are the different ways you describe yourself. And a really great exercise that we recommended to the audience was go through a list of adjectives and circle what is, does this describe my brand, or is this something I want to stay away from? So, things like the word aggressive versus assertive. How do you want to position yourself, like, especially in the nonprofit space, right? We want to come across with our values. So that is definitely one of the key things that we recommend starting there so that you know your brand. After that becomes a lot of the fun things, like what type of colors am I going to use, what type of fonts, what, how do I communicate visually what my brand is, and then how do I communicate through social media, through my website, through my interactions, what is my brand and company voice, and how does that show up online?
Do you think a lot of companies today really don't spend the time in doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. There are tons of really great brands out there and companies out there that have done a great job identifying, okay, this is who we're speaking to, this is our customer base. But then you find that that brand doesn't carry through their entire customer experience. Everybody that interacts with your customer should be carrying those same brand values, whether it's on social media, all the way to customer service, to in your retail locations. How are you making sure that everyone representing your business is showing up with those values? I think that's really important, and a lot of businesses, small to large, can start implementing that way more these days.
I guess when you were talking there, it kind of it reminded me. Obviously, the biggest thing in the news of branding and marketing these days is Kanye West and some of the troubles he's been in, and obviously the big brand Adidas cut ties with them, and This isn't, a one-off thing. We've seen a lot of this happening in the past where brands, really are really cognizant of who they associate with, right? And why is that so important?
Absolutely. Tons of brands work with influencers, work with celebrities in that way. And there can be great payoffs, but there can also be a lot of brand risk to partnering with the wrong groups or the wrong individuals. And what I believe that it comes back to, and Adidas eventually got to this point in their decision to break it off their relationship, is again coming back to those brand values. Is this person out there representing us, also representing what our brand stands for? And in the end, Adidas decided no, that Kanye isn't representing what we stand for, and they cut ties. And that happens over and over again. Is making sure you as a business understand what those values are will make that final decision a lot easier. And whether it's when you're making the decision to partner in the first place or potentially cut off a relationship, if you don't have a solid understanding of what those values are, you can kind of get lost in that process.
Okay, so I'm a small business, right? I'm Mario's Widgets, and I've got a little storefront down on 17th Avenue, that's all I have. Um, what would you suggest to me to start? How do I start in
Yeah.
this? I know it could probably be really overwhelming, right? But how do I start and to build a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with a ton of small business owners at the summit this week about this exact thing. They came up to us after the panel and said, what do I do? There's so many different aspects of marketing and branding. How do I start it on my own? And my number one recommendation is talk to and listen to your loyal customers. On the panel, we called them the nerdiest of nerds, people that geek out about your brand. Go to them, the people that have been consistently coming back to you, and ask them, what do you love about us? Why do you support us? And that is going to help indicate to you what some of those values are. Often, as small business owners, a lot of our personal values start to show through in our business values, how we treat people, how we operate things. And so, a lot of the times when you're a small business owner, you're the face of your business. A lot of people will come back to your business because of the values that you portray. So it's important to kind of understand what are those key things. Those will help you identify what makes you different, and then you can really capitalize on those. Bring those values now to the front of your marketing. If it's that you're family owned and people love supporting local, bring that to the front of your website, right? Family owned, locally run,
Yeah.
and bring those pieces that people really love and ask them and experiment with different things. Also, one of the things we were asked on the panel is, is what do I do with social media? How do I take my brand to social media? And I said social media is one of the best ways to experiment with new branding elements. You can really easily put a Instagram post up and it'll either get a ton of likes, people saying we love this, or it won't do as well as you thought it would. And you get some of that instant
Yeah.
feedback from your community directly.
Okay. And you mentioned the word community, and let's talk a little bit about that. And here's a plug for a good friend of mine, Tony Spallettini, that runs Spalumbos, right? And they've been around for many, many years. They're hugely into the community and well known in Calgary for doing that. What's your advice to small businesses out there when it comes to their role in communities and giving back to communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Community, there's so many different aspects of it. So you can look at it as your own community that you kind of curate around your brand, but then it's also really important to be aware of the community you already exist in. So if you're local to Calgary, Calgary has a fantastic community. Calgary has sub communities, right? Like our different locations within the city that you can get more involved in. And being a part of that, it's not just giving back, whether monetarily or with your time. It's about showing up and being a part of that community. A lot of what strengthens those bonds are the genuine connections between other individuals, other businesses supporting one another. So I think that's the first step to building a community and being a part of a community is just showing up authentically. And then beyond that, you'll start to find opportunities where as you grow, you can start giving back to help other members of the
Yeah.
community thrive with you.
And what about keeping up with trends? I'm just wondering how important that is, especially societal trends, right? Whether it be indigenous stuff with National Reconciliation Day, or diversity, or inclusivity, or environmentalism and climate change. Like, for a brand, how important is that to embrace those things, and to make them become part of your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big question that small businesses and very big businesses are all struggling with is how do we know how to react? And my number one recommendation is you shouldn't be reacting, you should be proactive in your approach and tying it back again. Does this align with my values?
Yeah.
Is if we're talking about Truth and Reconciliation Day or the Black Lives Matter movement, are what is encompassed in these movements aligned with my brand values, aligned with my values? And if they are, it's absolutely a great idea to show up for those, again, communities, and contribute to them and show your support. And the best way to do that when you're sitting trying to decide, do I jump on this new trend? Do I talk about this? Does it go back and align with my values? I think will be the number one indicator. And then also, I recommend don't always jump right off the bat. Give yourself time,
Yeah.
especially if it's like an annual day, Truth and Reconciliation Day. You have a whole year at this point now to start thinking about that. How do I want to approach this? So being really proactive and making sure that it aligns with your brand.
All right. Anything else you wanted to add before we sign off, Lauren?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me here today. I hope that I see any of you viewers at the next Small Business Summit next year. And yeah, good luck on your businesses and building and contributing to community. One of the biggest things of being a part and feeling that reciprocation out of what you're doing is being a part of something.
All right, super. Thanks very much, Lauren, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that was Lauren Gross, who is digital marketing lead for the Chic Geek based in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, senior news editor with Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.